Hello everyone and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk Commerce Extensibility Overview. My name is Evan and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and by participating in the session using Microsoft Teams, name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, please disconnect at this time. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event, and we will have time at the end to speak to some questions verbally. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Now let's get started. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Sam Jarwan, Principal Program Manager, and Muganthan Mani, Senior Program Manager. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Evan. So as Evan mentioned, we'll be covering the Commerce Extensibility Overview today. So Muganthan and I are both program managers on Dynamics 365 Commerce, focusing on different parts of extensibility. So we'll be swapping back and forth throughout some different topics here. So I'll start off with a little agenda. First, I will be giving you a brief architectural overview, then an extensibility overview to show you the extensible parts based off of the architecture diagram I'll be showing. And then Muganthan will be covering the HQ and headless commerce extensibility section. And finally, I will cover the e-commerce extensibility section at the end. So first, I want to give a little bit of an architectural overview. At the end, I have a link to past tech talks we've given, and we have an in-depth talk that we've already given on commerce architecture. So if you've seen that, you've probably seen this diagram before. If not, I'd highly recommend watching that. It gives great insight and a lot more detail than I'm going to cover here. But I'm just going to give a rough overview so that as we're using certain terms, you'll know what we're talking about as we go along. So at the very top, I'll bring your attention over to this top section here. The middle 3 columns represent the different channels that Commerce supports, or at least 3 of the channels. So over here would be the call center channel and back office user. In the middle is your retail store channel, your brick and mortar stores. And then this third column over here is the e-commerce website channel. At the far right, we have some e-commerce authoring abilities as well. We're not going to be going into too much detail there because we don't offer any extensibility points here. So back over to the first column, the back office. This, as you can see, has an arrow pointing down to the back office. So if you are familiar with Dynamics 365 Commerce Headquarters, or HQ is a term we'll generally use, you'll be familiar with this section. You can see some arrows down here showing that these apps run on top of the Common Data Service, as well as support the Azure Data Lake Storage, and Power BI is running off of that. So underneath Commerce HQ, you'll see some of the other Dynamics 365 apps that we work with: supply chain, finance, and HR. And we won't be covering any of that in this talk. In the middle column is, as I mentioned, the retail channel. And in here, you'll see things like the cloud point of sale, the modern point of sale, the app version, iOS, Android, as well as hardware stations. And this layer talks directly with our what we call our headless commerce, which enables our omni-channel support. So within this box down here, you'll see the commerce scale unit. And below that, you'll see a few other things like some services we support, like the Commerce AI, the cloud-powered search, fraud protection, and insights. We won't be going into any details there. We don't have extension points directly in those that we offer through Commerce. And then finally, over on this right-hand column, the e-commerce, this represents a customer hitting your e-commerce website, talking to this web storefront. And then just to complete the diagram, over on the right, you'll see some site designers or content authors, and they hit a tool that we use called Site Builder. I'll be showing that a little later when I'm giving an overview of some of the e-commerce stuff. We also have a digital asset manager that you can upload your product or marketing images to, as well as a ratings and review service. Again, we won't be going into much detail on those since they're not extensible. But the main extensible parts are these four that you see listed here. So HQ, which is Commerce Headquarters, Headless Commerce, which contains two parts, the Commerce Runtime, the CRT, and RS, which stands for Retail Server. Next is the Point of Sale, and finally we have e-commerce. So here are those four categories in purple on that same architecture diagram, and you'll see the HQ extensions over here, the Headless Commerce extensions right in the middle here, the Point of Sale extensions up here, and the e-commerce extensions. Muganthan will be covering these three over here, and I'll be covering this one over here. So let's move over to that, and with that, Muganthan, I'll have you take it away.
Thank you, Sam. Let me start presenting my screen. Yeah, I hope everyone can see my screen. So before jumping into the Headless Commerce extension overview, I just want to give a quick tech stack information on the Headless Commerce extension and the Point of Sale. So the Headless Commerce engine has like two parts, the Commerce Runtime, which we call it as Retail Server. Sorry, the Commerce Runtime, which we call it as the CRT, which contain all the business logic. Also, it has the OData, the web endpoint, which we call it as like Retail Server. All of those components is written in C#. So for any customization on the Headless Commerce, you need to like know C# to do the customization. And all our database is based on SQL. So if you're creating new table or procedure views, you need to know like SQL scripts. The last on the client side, the point of sale customization, it's all based on HTML, CSS, TypeScript, and then we use Knockout, but you can also use other UI libraries. Okay, so but all the business logic on the client side is like written in TypeScript, and the views are like HTML and CSS based. Okay. With that, I will give a little overview of the what is headless commerce extensibility and what you can customize in it and what you will not be able to customize. Also, I will go over the architecture of the headless commerce engine, and then we'll talk a little bit about like once you're done with the customization, how you can package and deploy it. And then I will show a quick demo of all of these different components. Yeah. Okay, so first let's start with the CRT or the headless commerce extension architecture. Okay, so if you've seen the overall architecture diagram, the headless commerce engine is kind of the core engine for the commerce. We call it as the core engine because it contains all the required business logic. Okay, so either the client can be either e-commerce or the point of sale or even any other external application can consume this business logic through the web API exposed and then get all the commerce functionality. Okay, that's why like having like a unified commerce engine will also like give you the omni-channel experience. If, for example, if you can buy order online and then pick up in store, right? So all those omni-channel experiences like provided by this commerce scale unit, because the business logic is kind of like hosted separately so that any different client can consume it. So all our point of sale, even the e-commerce, and then the pricing also use the same CRT pricing engine is kind of like shared between the headless commerce and as well as in the HQ. The call center in the HQ back office doesn't call directly to the CSU, the commerce scale unit. It's kind of like but uses the same DLL in both the places. Okay, so let's do a little bit deep dive on overall the extension flow, at least for these three components, the point of sale, CRT. Okay, and then I'll give like a very brief overview on the HQ extension. Yeah. Okay, so if you see this overall overview of the extensibility slide, so as I think Sam talked about before, you can customize the e-commerce. You can also customize the finance and operation. I think Sam will talk in detail about the e-commerce development. So I will give a brief overview of the back office. So the retail or the commerce solution has three parts, right? The client side of it, the back office, and then the headless commerce engine. So the back office contains all the master data and few other business logic, right? So even the back office is for the commerce is fully customizable. You can create custom views, custom classes, forms, etc. So you can customize the back office. Okay, suppose you are creating new master data or whatever, or like business logic for your posting and integrating with other modules in the FNO like the finance or the supply chain. So you can fully customize the commerce classes or also extend it to add new functionality. Okay, so they have like a rich FNO has like the rich extension model. So we can do like class extension, forms extension, and database extension. Okay, to support all your business need. So I will not go inside too much detail on this one, but just to give the overview, this is like the back office for the commerce is also fully customizable. Okay. So then the other part is the headless commerce and the point of sale. So the headless commerce, as I said, does like contains the commerce runtime .NET libraries, okay, which you can extend it for custom scenarios. Okay, so the things you can create is like you can create your own API, or you can also modify our business logic, and it's all like done in C#. Okay, and the commerce engine also talks to the database. Say for example, all the master data like product, price, it's all stored in the SQL database, right? So you can also extend the channel database for your customization scenario, which is all in SQL. Same with the client. You can also extend the point of sale for to support your UI extension and then some client business logic, client workflows, or like the client validation. You can extend the point of sale application. Okay, so from the overall flow is like you take the SDK. Okay, there is like two ways you can get the SDK. One, as you said, like here you can use the VHP, which you can download it from the LCS, like the live service, the lifecycle service, or you can also provision a developer VM using the lifecycle service portal. Okay. Or now recently we started publishing the SDK in GitHub, so you can also go ahead and download the SDK from the GitHub and then start customizing it. Okay. So from the overall flow, like you take the SDK, you do your development and compilation, and then finally deploy it. So all this kind of these yellow boxes are kind of like these are the different components you can customize, and then it can be deployed to different topology like the cloud hosted or the self hosted. I think in the architecture we would have covered like what are the different topologies. So you can host it either cloud or self, or like for the MPOS and the offline also you can include the same extension. So next I will talk about a little bit on the headless commerce architecture. Okay, as I said, like the headless commerce contain two main parts. One is the commerce runtime, which we short from everywhere you will see it's being called as CRT. Okay, which contains the core business logic. And I mean core business logic, like any commerce business logic. Say for example, when you add an item to cart in the e-commerce or in the point of sale, you need to get the product price, or you need to get the tax for that item, or you need to get the discounts, or you need to like see if the product is linked to a serial number or not. So all those core business logic is exposed as like service in by the commerce runtime using the retail server. So all this different business logic is included in the commerce runtime. Okay, and so how this categorized is kind of like categorized into like three layers. Okay, one is the services layer. Okay, which say for example all different business logic in the commerce runtime is grouped by services. Okay, so what I mean by services is like, say for example, all the customer related functionality is grouped into the customer service. Say like for example, creating a customer, updating a customer, getting the customer orders details, or getting the customer recent transactions. Whatever all those customer related functionality is grouped under the customer service. Similarly, for example, all the order related functionality like creating order, updating order, editing order, it's all kind of grouped under the order service. Okay, so and within that service there will be like for each different scenarios like create customer. For all of those servers there will be multiple request and response. Everything in CRT is kind of like a request and response. So even when you customize, you will customize a particular request. Okay, and after the service layer, the second layer is kind of like the workflow layer. So what the workflow layer does is, like, say for example, when you add an item from the client, you say like, hey, add this item to cart, right? When the client sends that request, internally the CRT does like a lot of other additional things, because before adding the item to the cart and sending back to the response, it need to do a lot of things, right? First get the product details, okay, then get the product price, and then get the product tags, and then get the product discounts. All those different steps, we call it as like workflows. So that is the next is the workflow layer, which is handled by the different services. Okay. And then the third is the database layer. So which we connect to the different data source. In our case, it's like SQL is the data source. So from the SQL data service, we connect to the channel database to get the master data, or once the transaction is completed, we'll update back the channel database with the transaction details. Okay. And then other important component headless commerce contain is the web API or the OData endpoint. I think this is called as the retail server. So basically all this service is nothing but like the C# class libraries, right? So this needs to be hosted somewhere so that like the point of sale application or the e-commerce can consume it, or any third party client, or for example, like you are building a power app to show a catalog or something, right? So you need to call the commerce runtime. So this need to be hosted somewhere so that anybody can consume it, right? So that's the job of this retail server, which hosts all this commerce runtime business logic and expose it as an endpoint with some authentication and authorization. Okay, so that any external client, any client can consume it. Okay. Okay. So that's what the key components in the headless commerce. Two main is like the CRT and then the retail server. CRT contains all the business logic, and then the retail server hosts the business logic for any clients to consume. Okay. Then from the extensibility point, all of this services inside CRT is extensible. Say for example, you want to customize the tax flow, right? So we have for tax, under tax service, there will be a request like get tax code, calculate tax service request. So assume like you want to modify that tax logic by integrating with third party service. Then what you can do is like you can override the calculate tax service request and then add your custom logic either by calling a third party service, or you can write your own logic to calculate the tax. Okay. Or suppose, for example, you're doing a shipping integration and then you want to call like some shipping provider like FedEx or UPS to get the charges and other create a shipping label or whatever. Then you can override the shipping service and then do additional customization on top of it. Similarly, on the database layer, we have an extension schema where extension can go ahead and say like, hey, I want to create custom table, procedures, views. Then you can do all those extension, database extension in this new extension schema we have. Similarly, on the retail server, suppose for example, you created completely new functionality and for your scenario, and then you want to expose it, then you can also create your new web API and expose this business logic. Okay. Suppose if you're customizing our existing service, then you don't need to like do a new OData endpoint. This is needed only if you're going to create like a new endpoint. Okay. Say for example, you added like a new table management functionality and then you want to expose it. That's where you're going to customize the retail server. Yeah. And then the last component, which kind of like outside of the headless commerce, is the proxy. Basically, there is like two types of proxy, TypeScript and then the C#. The proxy is nothing but like to call any OData endpoint, you need to know the metadata, the API structure, what is the input, output parameters and everything, right? So this proxy gives you that manager class so that you can easily call the web API from your application or from even inside the point of sale or the e-commerce. We use this proxy classes to call the retail server API. So the proxy gives more like a simple manager class. For example, there will be like relevant for customer service. There will be like a customer controller class. So you will just initialize that class and then call those manager in the backend. Automatically, we resolve that manager class to the right endpoint in the our retail server, and then we'll call that request and get you the response. So this proxy kind of simplifies how you call the REST API. So this also available as like a separate library, both like TypeScript as well as in C#. Because for a client application like e-commerce or something, you can use the TypeScript. Or if it's like a application going to run in Windows or somewhere in the server, you can use the C# library. Depends on your scenario. Yeah. And Also, as I said, like I think Sam previously talked about like e-commerce or the Bing for commerce search. Even we did like integration from our search service to we use like Bing for commerce search, right? So from our search service, we integrated to a lot different other services. Yeah. Okay, that's a brief overview on the headless commerce. Okay, to summarize, it contains two main components. One is the OData endpoints, which exposes all the business logic. Two is the commerce runtime, which contains all the business logic. And both of these are like customizable to suit your business need. Yeah. Okay. So then I'll little bit talk about like how you can customize the CRT and retail server, and then late and how it's going to get deployed to different topology. And then I will quickly at the end I will quickly show a demo of this. Yeah. Okay. So the commerce runtime kind of contains the business logic. Right? That business logic supports three different patterns to customize. One, before every service, you can do a pre-trigger or a post-trigger. What exactly the pre-trigger is? Say, for example, before creating a customer, you wanna say like do some additional validation or like call some external service to do some additional check. Then you can do all those in the pre-trigger, and then whatever business logic you want to proceed further, you can do it. Or say, for example, after customer is created, you want to call your CRM integration system and send some additional information to that system. So like, hey, this is a new customer created or something like that. Then you can do all those in the post trigger. Okay. And the other pattern we support is kind of overriding the handler. Suppose you say like, hey, I don't want to completely use your tax service. I have a third party integration. So I just want to use that service. I don't want out of the box business logic to execute. In those cases, you should completely override the request and then add additional response. Or you can also override, call the standard business logic first, and then you can implement additional logic on top of it, which you can either do it in the post trigger, or you can also override first call hours and then add additional business logic. Okay, so the three main patterns supported in CRT is like pre, post, and then overriding the request handler. Okay, and also you can other thing is like for custom functionality which you don't want to modify, but I want to create new functionality, then you can also create your own CRT request response and then expose that as a web API so that your client can consume it. Okay. The way how we structure this extension is right because we have different components. The cloud hosted scale unit, which is hosted by Microsoft in the Microsoft cloud, okay, Azure. And then the other way, and the other thing, some customers say like, hey, I don't want to host it in cloud. I due to network or some other issues, I want to host it within my store itself, right? Then you can also host the same scale unit, the headless commerce or the cloud scale unit within your network also in the store network. Okay. Also, the same business logic. Sometimes, say I don't have the hosted network, my device needs to work as like standalone. So then you can also embed the CRT as part of your modern point of sale installer also. Okay, so that it like works in the complete offline. Okay. So the advantage is here is like the same extension you create can the one commerce runtime extension you created can be hosted across different environments or like the different topology. It can be either hosted in cloud or it can be hosted like self-hosted in your local, or even it can be like used in the offline scenario. Same with the channel database. That's why we kind of like recently refactored the architecture or the headless commerce extension pattern so that one common extension can be hosted across different hosting environments. Yeah, even you can come up with your new way of hosting and host the CRT business logic. And other good thing is like it kind of like composable. So for example, in cloud hosted, you want to do a particular business logic, or in offline where I integrated with a third party tax service for online. But if there is no connectivity to my web service tax web service, then I want to do some offline logic. Still, you can make it more composable. Make this works only for this scenario. For online, use a different scenario. So you can completely compose it like as per the hosting environment. Yeah, so we have different config files to support those scenarios. Yeah, and the last thing is like all the out of the box service, as I said, like fully extensible. You can do a pre-trigger, post-trigger, and also you can create override handler, as well as you can create a new handler. Yeah, that's a kind of like the overall big picture of the commerce scale unit extension. like how you can create an extension and then host across different environment. Okay, so I'll show a quick demo of how you can create, from where you can get the SDK, and then how you can create a simple customization. I will not go deep inside the code since it's a overview session, but I will just give a quick overview. Yeah. Okay, so as I said previously, there is like two ways to get the SDK. One is starting 10.017 or 10.016, we started publishing our SDK in the GitHub for the headless commerce engine. So if you go to this particular doc session, so you can see the commerce scale unit repo, okay, here published in the GitHub. Okay, so for example, 927 maps to 1017, like on the 1016. You can click this release here. So it will take you to the GitHub branch where you can see the source code, or like the samples and the reference packages all published. So you can download this and start your customization. This is one way to get. Okay, the other way is where you can also get the SDK from the LCS developer VM. So in the same, so here I can, for example, I can go to LCS and then provision a new developer VM. And then once you log into this VM, there will be like a C drive folder. Say for example, this is the VM I already provisioned, I logged in. So here, if you go to the service volume K drive under retail SDK, that all the retail SDK components are available. So you can also do this way. Either download it from the GitHub, or you can get it from the by developer VM, which you provision in the, which will provision using LCS. Okay, so I'll show a simple customization. Okay, so for example, I created like a simple CRT customization, like a business logic customization. I think I talked about the trigger, right? So what you will need to do is like you just need to extend from this interface, okay, and then say like for which request you wanna add trigger, like before creating customer. In that case, you will say like create customer request. You can say that this is the request I'm gonna add trigger, and then you can do all your custom business logic. And then once you are done with all the customization, similarly, there are like a lot of samples for how to create different scenarios here. Okay, so if you're creating like a new request response, you're writing some business logic, you can later check all these classes. Okay, suppose I created a new extension. So I'm done with my CRT. Now I want to expose this as like a new endpoint. In that case, what you can do is like to expose it as a new endpoint, you'll extend from this particular class and then say like what is the method name I need to expose. So this will be the method name that will be exposed. Okay, you just need to follow this, use these two attributes. Okay, and then just create your custom method which you want to expose. And inside that method, generally in the retail server, you should not write any business logic. Okay, you should just call the request and CRT request and response. Okay, so it will call the business logic CRT and finally it will return the response. So now all these methods will be exposed as the web API. Okay, inside that web API, consider this web API is just like a wrapper which exposes CRT. So don't write any business logic here. Just wrap it with the CRT. That's so because if suppose if you write business logic here, suppose if you want to work this in offline, right, then you will not be able to use it, right, because you wrote the logic in retail server. Instead, if you wrote it in the CRT, as I showed in the previous slide, then you can just take the CRT DLL separately and put it in different scenarios. Yeah. Okay. So always it's like a best practice to write it in the CRT. Okay. Once you're done all with the customization, there's a packaging project. Okay. So here you just need to like tell the system, for example, here in the scale, if I edit that project file, you need to tell like what all my extension project, what all my channel database, and then just consume this package. Okay. And then once you build this guy, so it's going to generate you a output package, okay, which contain all your customization. So for example, if I go to this folder, so it generated the package. Sorry, this. So if I go here, you've seen that it generated the extension package. It's kind of like a zip file it generated with all the required file, the manifest. It also would have included all your DLL scripts and everything. It also created the config file under the extension folder. You can see all the different DLLs you included for the project all be included and packaged. Then you just need to take this zip package, what are the output zip package, and then go to LCS, the lifecycle service. Okay. here, and then under the else's lifecycle service, you'll select Commerce Scale Cloud Scale Unit extension. You click the plus button and then say it will ask you to import that zip file. So once you imported it, then you can just go inside your environment and then you can click maintain apply updates. Then it will show you if I click like apply updates, it will show you a drop down to select the extension packages. So it will load the extension packages here. Then you can click select and apply. So it will get applied to your environment. Yeah, you can also automate all this through like uploading the package through Azure DevOps pipeline. Okay, for now you have to, since we don't want like the DevOps pipeline to manually even deploy to production environment or so. So we don't have like the automated task to deploy directly to the environment, but you can use the Azure DevOps pipeline and you can automate till like uploading to LCS. Yep. Okay, that's a quick demo on the CRT extension. Okay, I will go back to my slide deck. So the next, so we now talk on the three blocks previously showed. We talked about HQ and we talked about the point of headless commerce engine, which has CRT and retail server, how to create the extension, what are the patterns, and how you package and deploy. Now the last topic and is the point of sale extension. Okay, so the point of sale is basically the client. So we also have the point of sale application. This is like we have like the same app, the same source code run in 4 different ways. Like you can run it in 4 different ways. One is the modern point of sale application, which is like a Windows UWP app. Okay. The next is the cloud point of sale, which is like based on your scenario, you can use the Windows application, or you can use the browser-based cloud POS, or you can use iOS and Android app also. The code base is, I will later show that in the slide, but the code base is kind of same across all these 4 app. It's like this code is shared between all the 4. The one customization you do will work in all these 4 cases. Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about the overall POS extension architecture and what all the extension you can do and how you package and deploy. And then we'll end with a quick demo on this one. Yeah. Okay. So the next, as I talk, like we're gonna talk about the POS extension here. Okay. So as I said, the POS extension is like 4 types of app, or like 4 ways we can use the point of sale. One is the, as I said, like the modern point of sale, which is like a Windows universal app. Okay, which is written in previous slides like HTML, CSS, and TypeScript. Okay, and the same app can also like run in a browser. In that case, the browser files are like hosted in the Azure web app. Okay, we call it as the cloud point of sale. So you just give the endpoint URL in your browser and it will render it. And you can use the same application in the browser also. Okay. Similarly, we have the iOS and Android. These are like, it's not like a fully native app, but we create a kind of a native shell in iOS and Android. Inside that, we just render the cloud point of sale. We use the kind of the web view, and then we render this cloud point of sale. Basically, like it's just like the iOS Android is like a shell, which internally run like the browser app. Yeah. So you'll not see like the browser header or something. We kind of the header is like it. So internally, it's kind of like within that app, it's running the same cloud point of sale. Okay, so the same app deployed here will work across this all 3 different applications, either the web-based one or the iOS or Android, but the code base is shared across all the 4. So one customization you do, you can like deploy it to the same, either if you deploy it in cloud, it will work across all these 3, or you can deploy it only to modern point of sale. Yeah, but the same code can be like shared across all this different. Yeah. Okay, so you don't have to like repeat the customization based on different components or you are using. Okay, and from the extension pattern wise, what you can do is like you can customize the UI layer. Say for example, you can modify the existing UI to add custom columns, custom buttons, or like depends on the view. Some views you can do like custom controls also. Similarly, you can also do hardware station extensions, so you can make the client extended to interact with any new hardware devices, like say like payment device, which we support out of the box. But if you want to integrate with a custom payment device or any other additional hardware device, you can extend the client. Also, you can include the commerce runtime for the offline in the client here. This all these 3 applications, since it's hosted in cloud, it doesn't support offline. Okay, only this the Windows application supports offline. Yeah. And for offline, let's locally talk to the own SQL Server or the SQL Express database here. Okay. Also, you can customize the client for the workflows or the activities, we call it as same like the workflow, like after adding item to cart, if you want to ask for some recent code or if you want to ask some additional check for permission, so you can all do those kind of validation or like change those business logic also in the client. Okay, the client also support very similar extension pattern, same like the CRT. You can do pre-trigger before any operation or post-trigger, or you can override the handler. In addition, the client also supports the UI customization. And everything in the pause also it's kind of request response, so you can modify it. Same like CRT, client has its own request response. There will be some one-on-one match, but not all of them is like one-on-one match between CRT and retail server. But you can see the list of APIs and everything available in the client, and then you can customize, do a pre, post, or like override the handler. Okay. And also you can create your own custom UX and everything on the client. If you're building new functionality, then you can add your own views and other things and also modify our views here. Okay. And then once you are done with the customization, you will package your extension separately. You can have like n number of extension package. It can include, if you have like offline, you can include the CRT. If you have the hardware station, HW is like for the hardware station, then you can include those hardware station extension and your client extension. And then you'll create output package, which you can install and deploy it separately. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I will quickly show a POS extension. Okay. Currently, the POS SDK is not available in the GitHub, but we're planning to publish that very soon. Okay, so you'll open the modern point of sale. If you see the, as I said, like the code is shared between the cloud and modern point of sale application. So assume like if you're customizing modern point of sale, you will open that solution file. And then as I said, like you can do pre-trigger. Say for example, before adding the item, you want to do some validation or check. You will extend the pre-product sale trigger like this, or like the post product after adding items. If you want to do something, you can extend the post product sale triggers. Okay, so for example, after item is added, I'm integrating with the new custom hardware device, so you can extend this trigger. So assume like you want to, once item is added, you want to show some display in a line display or some any other kitchen display, you want to send like display information, right? Then you can extend the post trigger and then do it, or you can do additional validation. Similarly, suppose if I want to override the handler, say for example, some product requires serial number, right? In that case, I don't want to ask the cashier. I want to call my web service and then get the serial number, right? Then you can override the serial number handler. Okay, and then say for example, for this item ID, instead of asking the user, automatically populate the value, right? So you can pass the value to this request, and then you can also automate this. I'm kind of like instead of showing the dialog, I'm kind of like automating the flow. So you can also override the handler. So for this, like we have like a handler supported handlers which you can override. Okay, the other one, the last one is like, and also you can create new views. So for example, I will show like you can create custom views and buttons, and also you can do existing view extensions also. So here, for example, under the view extension, I have extended the product search screen to add custom columns and buttons. So here you can see like I added custom columns, I added like custom button. Once I click this custom button, I want to navigate. This is my like a custom view, which you show like how do you want to create like a header split view, or how do you want to like create a alphanumeric number. This is like more like a sample code, but the idea is to showcase like you can create your custom view and add your other additional functionality. Or on a click of a button, I want to show like some custom dialog or do some validation. You can do all those kind of different extension. The other one is also you can also do like custom controls like this. Not all views support, it depends on the view. So you can add like custom controls, and then say for example you want to select item and then print like custom labels. So you can add some custom buttons to print labels. So you can do like a lot of different kind of extension on the client side. Yeah. Okay. And then once you're done with the customization, so you will just like build this project, and then it will create like output package file under the retail SDK. When you run the final build command, like the ms build command, it under the packages, it will finally generate the deployable package with all the, maybe I didn't like run the package, but you will see like all the packages created here, and then you can use that and deploy to your environment here. Okay, so with that, we are almost coming to end of the client side extension. So from the overall flow, as a developer, you get the extension, you package, you do all your customization, you package it, and then you deploy, upload LCS, and then you finally deploy to your environment. You can also, as I said, like integrate with a DevOps pipeline. Yeah. So the quick summary of overall what we did. So as a customization, you can see that all the yellow box are like kind of customizable. You can customize the headless commerce engine for business logic. Okay. Also, you can customize the same headless commerce engine for offline scenario. You can also customize the client. Okay, and then host it either in the cloud or like in the on-prem, depends on your scenario. Once you're done with all this customization, you'll package it and then you can deploy to different environment, either like the cloud hosted environment or your self-hosted or like the modern point of sale for offline. And also you can, if you have like any back office customization, you can deploy that here to X++. Yeah, I think Sam will cover in detail about the e-commerce. Yeah. With that, I will hand it over to Sam. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Bhagathan. All right, so for e-commerce extensibility, I'm going to cover a little bit of a deeper dive on the architecture. I will cover the tech stack, packaging and deployment, and provide a little bit of a demo. All right, so we've seen this diagram earlier before. This is the box I'll be covering, and you'll see here that this is the web storefront section right here. So first I want to talk about our tech stack. It's a little bit different than what Mugunthan was showing. It is using Node.js, React, our modules. I'll define what a module is in a few minutes, but we use React modules inside of our e-commerce rendering site. And for those modules, we use TypeScript, and for UX JavaScript UX library, we're using Bootstrap. Our modules that we build as part of our module library uses Bootstrap, but if you're building your own custom modules, you're free to use whatever UX library that you want. Okay, so if I go back to this box right here, let me go back a second, this web storefront box here, this is what it looks like in an exploded view. So over here, again, it's just the e-commerce customer hitting your website. Now within the web storefront, this is where our rendering platform lives. So basically what happens is the page controller will figure out what page you're requesting. It'll go off to the Commerce Site Builder services. And in essence, when you build pages within our site builder, it's being stored in the CMS system as JSON documents. So the JSON document will get pulled and stitched together at this layer and then passed into our node layer right here. So within the node layer, there's three sections I've blocked off here. So the first is the runtime. So you'll see here the SDK is part of that. We have a bunch of platform modules, platform data actions, and the TypeScript retail proxy. Mugunthan mentioned that a little bit, but we provide the retail proxy around all of the retail server APIs so that they're available, but you can also, if you've written your own retail server or CRT extensions, you can also add your own retail server proxy. The middle column represents the module library. There are some configuration files that allow you to configure site settings, for example, but the three meaty things that the module library comes with is a set of modules, so there's over 80 modules, a set of data actions, and data actions, the job of a data action is to get data for your module. I'll actually, the next few slides, I'll explain these three modules, data actions, and then finally themes. So in that last column on the right, that shows what you can extend. You can extend all of the ones I was just talking about. So modules, data actions, themes, as well as add additional site configurations. So notice the arrows down at the bottom are pointing to the Commerce Scale Unit. So or external data sources. So the retail proxy, for example, talks directly to the scale unit. So when a data action needs to get information like product information, maybe the price, the title, the description, etc., that will call down into the Commerce Scale Unit to get that information. But you can also write data actions to call a third-party service if you need to get external data. Now, a question actually that came up is a great question is, if I need to get data from an external service, where do I build that? So there's generally two answers to that. If you're building a omni-channel feature where you need the service for not only e-commerce, but maybe your retail server for your point of sale or your call center, then the natural place for that is going to be within a CRT extension, so the headless commerce extension. That way all your channels can leverage that data as well as the business logic. If it's something purely for e-commerce, then generally you'd put it in the data action, or if it's something to do with how your UX will lay out, then you put that in your data action. So now let me define those three pieces a little more deeply. So modules represent the core building blocks that make up an online page. In a few moments, I'm going to show you what that page looks like in Site Builder in case you haven't seen it. And so some examples here are you might have a feature or a hero module that is displaying information on your page. So a home page, for example, might have some marketing images, some text, some call to action buttons. Your header module is another module. Now, the header module that we ship as part of our module library is a special module. We also call it a container module because it contains other child modules, such as the search module, a sign-in module, the nav module, etc. And we do have some UI-less modules I wanted to call out. So a script injector module is one example of it, where within Site Builder you can add some JavaScript and it will get injected onto the page, but not necessarily add any UX to the site itself. So next is data actions, and like I mentioned, that's used to get data actions, or apply business logic to a module, as well as share data across modules. So if you're building multiple modules that need a shared set of data, you can use data actions for that. So we do provide a core set of data actions. As you saw in the diagram, there was some platform and the module library that has data actions for you to use, and then custom data actions that you can create. So you can create those data actions to call your own third-party service, or use the proxy APIs that we provide to call into any of our services like the retail server or our AI library or AI services or other services such as ratings and reviews, etc. You can call those, or any of your own APIs that you may have created in the CRT that you've exposed. Okay, so last area I haven't covered yet is our themes. So themes contain the SAS or CSS, if you're more familiar with CSS, style definitions, and control the general look and feel of a site. So you can only configure a site to have one theme, and I'll show that in a moment. And themes also support something that are called style presets. So style presets are a bunch of variables that are exposed to the site builder that will allow your site author to easily configure and change those, so they don't have to drop to code. They can do codeless changes. But you can also create more than one style preset. So some examples of a set of presets might be a set used for a dark theme, a light theme, a classic theme, and a vintage theme. And then the site can be changed to whichever one is needed. Themes also provide the ability to override a module view and module configuration properties. What this means is that not only can a theme change the CSS of one of the modules, and that could be one of the built-in module library modules or a custom modules, but it can also override the view, and that allows you to change the actual HTML that is being rendered for that module. So that way, if you need to make some minor changes to one of the modules we ship, you can do that within a theme. If you need to do broader module changes, you can also clone one of our modules, and that basically makes a copy of it. And so I won't go into details on that, but I have other talks, tech talks that we've gone into much more detail on that. So let me quickly switch and show you the visual of what a module looks like and a theme. So over here, I have the site builder loaded. This is the home page for a site builder. So let's talk about themes first. So at the top right here, I'm on my site Fabricam, but if I go into manage sites, there is a button to create a new site. This is where you initially pick your theme. So you can see Fabricam and Starter are the two themes that we ship, and AdventureWorks is a custom theme that I've built right here. So I won't create a new site now, but that's how you initially set it up. Back in Fabricam here, once you have your site created, there's a design tab here, and this shows your different available presets. In this case, the Fabricam has 2 that it comes with. There's always a default preset, and then there's another one that was just called default.fabricam. So these are 2 different presets that have shipped, and you can make any one active that you want. You can also change. So if I select this view button, I can now see all the variables that I have access to. And so, for example, if you're familiar with Fabricam, I'll just click over here for a second. You'll notice that the green accent color is used throughout the site. You can change that right here. These are the global settings, but there's also a module level setting. And you can customize what shows up in here for your site authors to use. You can add or remove additional properties, and you'll want to add some as you add your own custom modules as well. And once you're done here, if you can select any of these to be the active theme, and when you make changes to the default, it'll create a copy for you, and you can now use that one as your view. And if you ever want, you can remove those, and you can go back to the default if you ever need to. That's about all I'm going to cover on themes. I've got a great tech talk on really that goes into depth on building your own theme. I'm now going to move over to showing you what a module looks like. So I'm going to hop over to our home page here. And what I see here is on the left is a tree view of my page. I have a rendering of the page in the middle, and then basically the right panel are my properties for the selected item in my view or in my tree over here. So for example, notice, in fact, I'll go over here for just a second. Notice this page here is made up of several modules. We have a header module up here. And again, we have some sub-modules. We have a search module, a sign-in module. Up here, we have a banner module. This is called a carousel module. And within the carousel module, as you flip through the carousel, there are different items in here. So I'll show you what that looks like from the tree view. So notice here's a carousel module. And when I select it, over on the right, I'll see a bunch of properties that I can modify. I need to click edit if I want to make any changes. That's why it's all grayed out right now. Or I can select one of the submodules underneath that. So I'll select the first content block. Now the content block has different layouts. This is the hero layout. A little lower, these are a tile layout of the same module. And so you can see you can make modules look and feel quite different based on a layout. And then there are properties like a heading, a rich text, there are images. There's all kinds of configuration properties. So as you build your own modules, you have the full flexibility of adding any of these configurations. You can also extend any of the modules to add or remove some of these if you need additional fields in here. Let me see here. Okay, that is about all I want to show you on modules. I've shown you modules, themes within Site Builder. Data actions don't show up here. They're kind of hidden from the Site Builder. They are just used when you're navigating your site. Each module is using a data action to get its data. So for example, when I select a category on this page here, there is a data action that is driving getting the results for this category, and the data is being displayed in the module, the appropriate module here. I'm going to go back to the deck now. And so I want to talk briefly about setting up a development environment. So Mugunthan mentioned there's a VM available that is used a lot of times for development of your headless commerce or your point of sale extensions. With e-commerce, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit lighter. You can use any dev environment. You can use a laptop, a machine. You could even install these tools on the VM if you want. But what you need is Node.js. So that's your JavaScript runtime engine. So you can debug and build your modules and see them locally on that environment. Yarn is a tool that runs on top of NPM. So if you've ever used Node.js before, you probably have seen NPM, which stands for Node Package Manager. And Yarn is just an extra tool that runs on top of NPM. It just simplifies a lot of things. So we use that tool. And Visual Studio Code is our source code editor. So once you install those generally, if I'm setting up a new machine, take probably about 5 minutes to get those installed. And then finally, the last thing you need to do is get our online SDK. So to do that, you can see here the git clone command, or you can go right to the repo, and I have a link at the end of this to our documentation that will help get you started as well. But you can do this even if you don't have a commerce environment set up. You can start building modules locally. And finally, once you clone the repo, that doesn't get you the full SDK. When you run the yarn command, it will use npm to pull down all the available packages. So in total, this takes roughly a little bit under 10 minutes to set up a complete end-to-end dev environment. So I want to show you what that looks like. So I do have Visual Studio running right here. I've pulled down the SDK and I've added a couple of modules here. Now, the first thing I want to call out is as you're building any code, it all gets stored under the source directory. So there's a modules directory, a themes directory, and if I was to add any custom data actions, you'd see a data actions directory here as well. I just don't have any right now. When you first download the SDK, you'll see one module in here. It's just a simple hello world module. And you can see if I click on this TSX file that it is just a React component. So our modules are basically a one-to-one mapping of React components or React modules. So you can see here how this class extends the React Pure component. So I've built a custom module that I have here, and you can see this TSX file as well. You can see how in the name of my module is product feature, and then I have this, it's extending the React Pure component. And then finally, once I have the business logic needed for my module, it's then calling this render view down here, which exists in a view file. This view file allows you to, this view file is extensible. So in my theme, under my themes directory, notice I have my AdventureWorks theme, and there's a, you can extend these themes to be able to add your view extensions in here. Okay, so what I want to show you now is this running. I have my Node server running down here. I have a terminal window open. I've already run my Node server. So let me split my screen here and bring up a web browser. And what I'm going to do is load up my local host. And then there's a helper URL _SDK/all modules that will give me a list of all the modules I currently have installed. So by the way, that port 4000, there's an environment file right here. And in this file, you'll see the port configured. So that's my Node server running on this port. So you can change that to whatever you want. You can also in this file point to any commerce server that you have, retail server right here, and that will allow me as I'm building my modules to pull real data. Now, a lot of times I may not have a server to work against. In that case, we can just use mock data. So let me show you what one of these modules look like. Now, I've only, if you recall, I only have 2 modules under here, but why are so many modules showing up? These are all modules that are core modules or part of the module library. So notice in here one called promo banner, for example. That's the module up here, but also notice it doesn't quite look like this when I clicked on it to run it. That's because no CSS is being applied. I have to tell it to use a theme. So I've created a theme called Spring, and whoops, promo banner. Actually, I'm sorry, I want to use the Fabricam theme for this one. And there you go. You can see it looking more like this. Now it's using mock data. That's why the text looks a little different than the one you see on the live site here. Now, if I hit the back button and go back to that list, I want to show you my one custom module I have created here, product feature. Now this one, if I just show you the product feature module here, there's a definition file here. And what I've done is I've told it right here, data actions, to use one of our built-in data actions to get simple products. So that's going to give me product information, and I have a mock file asking with a product ID in it. And then in my view, I'm outputting 2 classes with data on the left and data on the right. Now notice it's not rendering 2 columns here. So if you're familiar with Bootstrap, this is a Bootstrap construct because Bootstrap uses a 12-grid system. Again, what I need to do is I haven't told it to use a theme yet, and in the theme that tells you to use my theme tells me to use Bootstrap. So what I need to do is just add theme, and I've created a theme called Spring, and now I'm using Bootstrap so I get those columns. And you can see this data is pulled in from my live server. But again, if I don't have a live server, and again, I've configured my server right in here, that's okay. I can just use mock data, and you can see I have additional mock data when I'm testing that. I have a product title and an image and things like that. So pretty simple to do. The last thing I want to cover is deployment. So I'll go back to the slide here, and when you're ready and you are finished all your configuration changes, you can run a command yarn msdyn365 pack. So we have a bunch of CLI commands. Pack is one of them. We also have one for creating a new module or a new theme or a new data action. And this is just one of them. That will create a zip file that'll package everything up. And the same way Mugunthan showed you how to upload an extension, you go into LCS, and in this case, in the asset library, you select the e-commerce package, whoops, as shown here, and you can just add the file and upload it. That generally takes about 10 minutes to upload. And then you need to go to your environment that you want to apply it to and apply it, and that again takes about 10 minutes. And then those new modules and themes will show up in Site Builder once that's complete. So we are out of time now, actually, and I reached the end, which is great. I do have this slide with additional resources. So we have, as you probably know, we have a Tech Talk series going on right now, and there is a URL to get to all the previous talks. And I have a few relevant talks that I brought up, like the commerce overview and the architectural overview, and then the last one, how to extend the e-commerce. Is a good talk to get into more details on that. We also have some articles, but if you want to get a hold of us, one of the best places to do that is joining our Insiders Yammer group, as well as our commerce forums. So hope to see you guys there, and thank you for spending this time with us. And back to you, Evan.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. We would like to get your feedback on today's session. I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We value your feedback and welcome your input on how we did today and what you would like to see in future sessions. That survey scores on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible, and we thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and a thank you to our audience for logging in and joining us today. Please stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.